parents on creating topic statements for our explanatory paragraphs and creating thesis statements for explanatory essays, creating well-focused, well-organized explanatory and comparison contrast paragraphs as well. Then speaking and listening goals, speaking collaboratively always, and listening attentively always. Language goals is determining the meaning of unknown words, like that question that we showed just now, interpreting figurative language, um, having some practice with prepositional phrases, connecting ideas within sentences and paragraphs, and punctuating and capitalizing titles correctly in sentences. So here we have the first passage. I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud for you guys. It's called The First Food Ceremony. My eyes opened to the sound of people moving about the long house. I was still sleepy, but the spring air called to me. I quickly dressed and ran to the door. Wait, sound of running feet called Mother. We need to prepare for the ceremony and celebrations, and you must change into your ceremonial clothing. The idea of wearing the uncomfortable dress and working in a crowded long house all day made me cringe. But Mother, I pleaded, I just want to savor this beautiful spring day. Why must we do this every year? I asked impatiently. The first food ceremony is an important tradition for our people, explained Mother. It symbolizes a new beginning and the start of the fishing season. So every spring, when the salmon return and swim back up the Wallowa River, we welcome them with singing, dancing, and music. They come back every year, so why must we celebrate before we can fish? I asked. My father, Chief Joseph, joined in, saying, It is more than celebrations. Our feelings and beliefs are expressed together as one by the singing, dancing, and drumming rituals. They help us honor our connections to the land and the living things that enable us to survive. We honor the salmon for being the first animals to volunteer themselves for our people to eat. We honor the nettles, camas flowers, and shellfish we harvest. But it is more than that, said Father, pausing thoughtfully. We also remember where we come from as a people. We share stories that have been told since our tribe first began. For the first time in my life, I began to truly realize the meaning of the ceremony. And now I wanted to make my parents proud. But how much can I really contribute? I wondered aloud. As a 12-year-old girl, you have an important job, Mother said with a smile. You will help prepare the feast to enjoy after the ceremonial first foods are eaten. Later, as I sat with my family and friends, I felt as though my heart was a drum that beat in rhythm with the music filling the air. I listened as Father and the elders told stories and myths, and as I tasted the salmon, I had helped to season and cook. I felt a strong sense of pride and belonging. I gave a silent word of thanks to the salmon for its sacrifice. Most of all, I was grateful that my parents had helped me to understand my place in our beautiful culture. And then passage 2. So they would have seen these passages back to back. In the Nez Perce treaties of 1855 and 1863. In the 1800s, the westward expansion of white settlers negatively impacted the cultures and lifestyles of many American Indians. In 1848 and 1853, Oregon and Washington became new U.S. territories. However, they were part of the Nez Perce homelands. Nez Perce were nomadic. They traveled across 17 million acres to hunt fish and forage. The increase in settlers brought immense change to their way of life. This led to treaty talks between the Nez Perce and the U.S. government. The Nez Perce leaders believed that signing a treaty was the best way to preserve their homelands from further intrusion. The terms of the treaty included a 7.5 million acre reservation and the right to hunt and fish in their homelands. The government also promised schools, a hospital, buildings, and $200,000 in aid. The leaders of all 56 Nez Perce bands signed the Treaty of 1855. Soon after signing, problems occurred. The government did not enforce the treaty. Instead, after gold was found on the reservation, they opened the land to more settlers. When a new treaty was proposed in 1863, the Nez Perce were divided. They were made up of separate bands. No one chief spoke for all Nez Perce. Some were discouraged by the government's previous empty promises and new terms. Others wanted to continue working with them. Dale Passage 2 continued. One disadvantage of the new treaty was the loss of land. It would reduce Nez Perce land by 90%. Old Joseph, Whitebird, and Young Joseph were among those who opposed the new treaty. Their bands lived outside the boundaries of the newly proposed reservation. It would mean leaving their homeland of Wallowa, Oregon. Young Joseph, who would later become Chief Joseph, was committed to his people's nomadic culture. He did not want a farming or ranching lifestyle as the government suggested. Another group of Nez Perce leaders, including Lawyer and Timothy, were in favor of the treaty. Their bands lived within the new boundaries. One advantage of the treaty was that white settlers would not be allowed on the new reservation. They were also satisfied by the promised payments from the government. They felt signing was a way to avoid future conflicts. In the end, only some leaders signed the 1863 treaty. The U.S. government thought they had reached an agreement with all Nez Perce people. Those who did not sign believed they would not be held to the terms of the treaty. They did not want to give up their culture or leave their sacred homeland. This eventually led to war in 1877. Question 1. What is the theme of the first food ceremony? So another word for theme would be lesson. So A, stories that are passed down hold special meanings. B, there is more than one way to honor family and traditions. C, celebrating cultural traditions can bring a community together. Or D, children can learn about their culture when they ask questions. Take a moment now to try to think of the answer yourself. Okay, the answer was C. Celebrating cultural traditions can bring a community together because we saw that it was bringing Sound of Running Feet's community together. Question 9. Which statement should be included in a summary of paragraphs 4 to 6 of the Nez Perce Treaties of 1855 and 1863? A. The U.S. government did not understand the culture of the Nez Perce people. B. Young Joseph was a very important figure who would become Chief Joseph later. C. Old Joseph, Whitebird, Lawyer, and Timothy were leaders of different bands. Or D. A main disadvantage of the treaty was the reduction of the Nez Perce land. Take a moment now to try to come up with that answer yourself. That one was D. A main disadvantage of the treaty was the reduction of the Nez Perce land. That was something that was mentioned a few times. Oh, what is that? Sorry. Okay. I don't know why it already has the answer, but okay. Which sentence best states the relationship between the Nez Perce and the U.S. government after signing of the Treaty of 1855, as described in the Nez Perce Treaties of 1855 and 1863? And the answer to that one was the relationship was strained by the government's failure to uphold the treaty. So that one is showing as main idea. Don't know why it's already showing the answers, but it is. So I'll just read the question and the answer. This is showing relationships among ideas. So part A says the first food ceremony is a story about the Nez Perce. The narrator of the story is Chief Joseph's daughter. The story is set around the year 1875, which is several years after both Nez Perce treaties were signed. How does the author of the Nez Perce Treaties of 1855 and 1863 support Chief Joseph's feelings expressed in the first food ceremony? And it says the author includes Chief Joseph's reasoning for refusing to sign the Treaty of 1863. Again, this is something they could have gone back into the text to find. Part B, which excerpt from the Nez Perce Treaties of 1855 and 1863 best supports the answer to Part A. So whenever they have a question that is Part B and Part B will always connect back to Part A. So they need to look back at the answer they chose and make sure that their answer in Part B connects or makes sense. If not, then one of those is incorrect. So this one says he did not want a farming or ranching lifestyle as the government suggested. That connects back to being his reason for refusing. Right, 13, verb tense. There is more than one verb tense question on here on the benchmark, but this was one. Which choice corrects the verb tense in this sentence? After the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the Lewis and Clark expedition exploring the new Western territories between 1804 to 1806. So what we tell students when they're looking at this is to first of all find the verb and then quickly look through the verbs and try to figure out which one is making the most sense, which one's matching the rest of the sentence, whether it's present tense, future tense, or past tense. So I'm going to give you a moment to think on this one. So in the text here, we see that it says exploring. So after Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the Lewis and Clark expedition exploring the new Western territories. Exploring is present tense. And since it's 1803, we know that this is not the present and this is not the future, so it would be past tense. And if we look through our answers, the only one that is past tense is a first choice because it ends with ed, explored. So on the Q2 benchmark, students will be assessed in these areas: literal and figurative meaning of words and phrases. We're working a lot on that now. We're reading The Phantom Tollbooth, and it has endless examples of this. Plot structure, again, with our new novel, we're looking at those elements, those structure as well. Illustrations, it is a chapter book, but every now and then we do have illustrations within it, although it is all black and white. Theme or the lesson, supporting ideas with specific quotations from the text. So not only are they having to give an idea, they have to be able to support that with evidence. And then idioms and commas. We will also cover these areas for writing, purposefully structure events in an imagined narrative to create exposition and develop characters, conflict resolution, and meaning. So we're switching over from informative essays to narrative essays. Convey character personalities, traits, conflict using dialogue. So in these narratives, these stories they're writing, they're going to be creating characters. They're going to be giving their characters personality traits, physical traits, as well as having them have dialogue or conversations with each other. They're going to use descriptive and sensory language, so trying to focus on the things that they see, smell, hear, taste to make their writing more exciting, and illuminate wordplay. So being able to know that some words have double meanings and how to use those double meanings to create humor or confusion, and strengthen narrative writing by planning and revising dialogue sequences. So we will be planning and revising consistently. And articulate and elaborate on central theme of a literary text by writing an explanatory paragraph. What can you do at home? Ask your child daily if she has homework. If they are one of my students, then they will definitely have IXL lessons or Lexia lessons that they can do at home every single night. There's plenty of work on their computer. They just go through ClassLink and they have those programs, and you can check if you go to the icon on IXL, for example, that says My IXL, and it tells you what lessons they have from what teacher. So check your child's Schoology for grades as well as any assignments, especially if they were absent. Encourage reading a library book 20 minutes a night. And yes, again, encourage practicing those lessons. If you see, for example, like a little orange circle on Schoology, it means they have not completed that assignment. And if you click on the icon that says grades/attendance, you'll be able to see their grades on Schoology. All right, math.
Hello, I am Miss Womack, and I will be going over our math benchmark data as well as some expectations and what we covered in our first quarter. Over the next several slides, we'll be discussing some of the most commonly missed questions and some of the skills and understandings necessary to demonstrate success on future assignments. Hello, Ramses. I see that you're there with us in the chat. So here we have some celebrations to make. Nearly 70% of students were able to successfully answer questions regarding volume, which is phenomenal. Students demonstrated perseverance by working out each of the answers, and they determined one or more of the best answers. For example, in question 1 that you see on your screen, which solid figure has a volume of 18 cubes? And they had to figure out, using the volume formula or using other strategies that they've learned, which of the figures had 18 cubic units. And so the formula for that, okay, grabbing my glasses, the formula for that is length times width times height, or the base area times the height. So they basically need to be able to count and visually understand which of those figures will be will consist of 18 cubes. So the answer choice A is 3 by 3 by 2. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 2 is 18. So that would be the correct answer choice. Answer B is 3 times 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is obviously trying to get them to think like, oh, well, there's a 3 times a 6, so that's 18, but that would be 18 times 3 in that example. The choice C is 3 by 2 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that one is also trying to kind of see how much they understand the concept of the base area, or the length and width times the height. And then the fourth answer choice is 4 times 2, which is 8, times 4, which is 32. So it's not showing us that same, that requested volume. Question 12, which multiplication sentence shows how to find the volume of this prism? So that's telling us that they understand how to use the formula of either length times width times height, which they can see that those are their only choices in this particular example, or base area times the height. And so they would need to count how many blocks it is, the figure is long and wide. So those would be the two bottom dimensions of 6 and 3, and then how tall it is, or the height of the figure, which would be 4. So they would have to be able to tell me 6 times 3 times 4. So that's going to be choice B. And then the volume. So question 17, Chaz has 2 planter boxes that he has arranged as shown below. So they're going to have to be able to tell that it's 2 separate boxes. They're going to have to find the volume of both boxes and then combine them. So 10 times 5 times 4. So you'll do the 5 times 4 is 20, times 10 is 200. And then the 3 times 3 times 6. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 6 is 54. So then they're going to have to, is that, I think it's a 3. No, it's a 5 times 3. I'm sorry. It's very small on my screen. 5 times 3 times 6. So it'll be 15 times 6, or 18 times 5, or I would recommend them do 30. So 5 times 6 times 3, which would give them 30 times 3, which would be 90. And then I would have them add from there so that they would be able to solve. But they did, 70% of them were able to successfully answer these questions, which is great. So we're very happy with their understanding of volume. On this next slide, it says Rocco uses the box shown below to store paper clips. His mom bought him a new box that is double the length, height, and width. What is the volume of Rocco's new box? So if the box shown below is 4 inches by 3 inches by 2 inches, they're going to have to tell me, firstly, that the volume of this box is 24 cubic inches. But then his mom bought a new box that's double the length, width, and height. So that's going to have to be doubled. So that's going to be 48 cubic inches. So they're going to have to understand what the word double means in this particular example, and understand that the picture that is being shown as the example is not the new box. It is the original box to store the paper clips. Question 18, look at the division problem below. 4,864 divided by 16. Which of the following show a way to solve this division problem? Choose two that are correct. So in this particular example, students are going to have to understand that they can decompose or break down the number 4,864 into smaller bits. So when we look at choice A, we see 4,800 divided by 16, which you can see in the actual problem, 4,864 divided by 16. So you can see the correlation there. And then we also see the 64 being divided by the 16. So choice A is going to be one of those choices. Choice B has actually broken down or decomposed both of the numbers. So the dividend has been broken down into 4,860 and then 4. But then the divisor 16 was broken down by 8 and 2. And so that one's not going to be the correct choice, because to divide part of the dividend by part of the divisor and then the other part of the dividend by another part of the divisor, that's not something that we have practiced. Choice C, dividing 4,864 by 10 and then dividing that by 6, that's not going to work due to the order of operations. And then choice D, 4,800 divided by 8. Again, this is a little more similar to what choice D, or choice B was saying. It's like you can't break down the dividend 4,864 and also the divisor. You have to keep something consistent throughout. And so that's where we see consistency in choices A. So we see like the consistency there in choice A and D, because you can break it down 4,800 divided by 8 and then 64 divided by 2. Sorry, chat keeps popping up. So we'll have choices A and D on that one. And then this one, so one of the things that we have really, really tried so hard to work on with the kids, and this has been something that pops up in 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade. I'm not sure about 2nd and lower, because I've not taught those grade levels. But when they have multiple select items, those seem to be more challenging, because they struggle to remember after they've read through the question once or twice that they have more answers that they need to select besides just one. And if we could pop back to slide 28, if that's possible, so I can point something out.
The slide
28, the one before. Sorry, the one. Okay, so if you'll notice, the circles are the answer. So the choices beside have circles beside them. This always signals there is one choice. So then if we could advance a couple slides to where there are square boxes. So you'll see the square boxes, and then this is the slide that we were just on. So the square boxes signal that there's more than one choice. And as much as we try to remind them, it's always a challenge that, if it's choose 3, sometimes they just choose 2 or 1. And if it's choose 2, sometimes they just choose 1. So this is something I would really like to signal to emphasize to them. So Thomas has a box of with a volume of 180 cubic inches and a height of 5 inches, which could be the 3 possible values for the box's length. And so basically, we have one of the measures in the 5 inches of the height. And so the students would need to check to see if the length and the width multiplied by the given height of 5 inches would equal 180 cubic inches. So that's the basic idea on that one. And they would have to test all 5 of the choices in order to find the 3 correct choices. And that does take a bit of stamina and a bit of commitment to the problem, to the question. So we continue to work on that stamina with them every single day. And To wrap up, the expectation, very similar to ELA and social studies, the expectation is that all students complete 2 lessons per week in IXL, or they also practice for approximately 10 minutes per day on IXL. A lesson should take about 20 minutes. And so, we don't want to add too much homework to anyone's plate, but we do want to make sure that, especially these tested subject areas, are being practiced regularly. And so they will have assignments in IXL and also in iReady. And if there's ever a time where a student is like, oh, I finished my homework, you can ask them what's their progress on their iReady path, because there's a path that's designed specifically for them according to their diagnostic test that they take at the beginning of the school year. And then also there are IXL assignments given, and there are also IXL topics that we encourage the students to be practicing on. I know specifically our 5th graders could use a little bit of practice in the subtraction of just whole numbers topic, because that was one of the biggest hurdles when we were doing division of whole numbers, which was the second portion or part B of our unit 3. So subtraction and division will be worked on during our BINC time or our personal learning time, as well as on IXL and in iReady, just to try to improve that in the best, most efficient way we possibly can, so that we can move forward on with the things that we'll be learning about.
I guess this slide's not really done.
Yeah, I mean, and I would have your student sit down with your student and have them show you their computer and say, show me how you get to IXL, show me how you find your assignments, show me, if they can show you, then we know that they can do it. So, part of this is like, if they can teach it and explain it, then that if you say, okay, it's time for you to go do your online homework, then they can head off and do that and hopefully be successful.
All right, well, that is all that we have, and we would love to hear your feedback. So please scan this QR code or type in the name of this link. And that is it. Does anyone have any questions? Is there any questions in the chat, Womack?
Any questions? Just a few hellos that I saw from it looks like a few kiddos that were on. So hello, Ramses and Jocelyn. Thanks for joining.
Okay, I'll go to the next slide now.
Hello, Miss Womack.
I'm glad you're here, buddy. I hope you enjoyed it.
It says, thank you. Our next benchmark window is December 11 to 20. Make sure your child is at school every day so that we can ensure they are well prepared for their tests. Talk with your child about testing strategies like eating a good breakfast, going to sleep on time. Encourage plenty of rest. Oh, what I just said, breakfast and going to sleep. But also talk to them about like breathing strategies so they don't get anxious while they're taking the test, and know how to self-regulate and calm down. But that is all. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Focused in class. I think staying focused in class is super important, and asking questions when something seems unclear. I highly encourage. We're teachers. We love questions.
All right, well then I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Bye, Miss Lena.
Bye. Hey. Bye, everyone.